Okay, we're recording.
So, everybody, welcome to the January installments of Seasteading meetup. It's a pleasure to see all of you here. Thank you very much for joining us. We are also doing a video recording which we'll put online tomorrow morning. And we have a very special guest today. Actually, maybe the guest is not as special as the topic itself.
The guest is special too.
Yeah, Mike has been around with us for a couple of meetups already, so you probably know everybody, know him already. So let's go to agenda. We are at a few minutes past 7:30, which means the time for introductions. So let's do our usual round of kind of introductions. There are a couple of new people here that I have not met, so it'd be great to talk a little bit about yourself and specifically why you're interested in seasteading, and if you do any projects or think about any projects creating, following up the seasteading sort of mindset that you'd like to share. It'd be great. Not only people here would love to hear about it, but also the people in the meetup that will get a link to the video. And I know we have a couple of very interesting projects going on. So I'd love to hear more about, including the medical tourism with Mark, the Blue Seat. I think we have some Blue Seat people here, and as well as Seasteading Institute. Thank you for coming. All right, so let's move on right into introductions. You want to start, Mike?
Yeah, Mike Doty. I've been with Seasteading, worked on Freedom Ship earlier. So, yeah, a new country junkie.
Mark Joffrey, another long-time New Country junkie. Further to Roman's point, I'm leading a little group that's kicking around ideas around medical tourism and other medical services that could be provided on a seastead. We're working on some individual papers and hopefully putting that together into something that might be useful for the upcoming conference on June 1st and 2nd. So if you're interested and you're seeing this on video, joffemd@yahoo.com, and I can hook you up with the rest of the group.
I'm Jeff Chan. Interested in seasteading for a long time. Actually about it for many years before the Seasteading Institute came around. And a lifelong journey. I hope something happens eventually. It's good thought experiment, if nothing else, on what people like to do. A chance to set up a new system, greater freedom. So,
Roger Arnold. I'm semi-retired systems architect and interested in clean energy issues. I'm silverthornengineering.com is my company, and I've been advising a couple of pre-startups in the clean energy area. One of them is stratosolar.com, which can be found on the web. The other is Marshall Hydrothermal, looking to tap the energy of hydrothermal plants. That's also on the web. And brewing various other ideas that are not yet written up. But a lot of them revolve around the idea of doing things at sea. I'm originally an old L5 junkie.
I'm Charlie. I work with the Seasteading Institute as an admin, and I would love to be involved with some sort of seasteading entrepreneurial venture in the future. I think that there's a lot of cool potential both to change the world for the better in terms of policy and make a profit while doing it. So that's what excites me. Yeah.
I'm Michael Keenan, president of the Seasteading Institute. I see seasteading as a way for us all to have a society much closer to the kind of society that we want. There is no one ideology that works for everybody. My ideal society is not your ideal society. Maybe a few people in this room actually. I'd love to run the same country as you. But that certainly doesn't scale to 300 million people or a billion people. And the other is that we can unleash a huge amount of human potential, not just by changing what government does and the nature of society, but making it do whatever it does much better, cheaper and more efficiently. I also take this time to announce a few things that are new with the Institute. Our new website launched today, or last night. There are still some broken links in there, so if you find them, please let us know. I'm going to speak in Marin County on Sunday. So if you know anybody who it's a libertarian group mostly, but the subject is seasteading, so anyone who could be interested from any angle, futurism or anything else, get them in touch with me. Also a speech at UC Berkeley on Tuesday, so if you know anyone at Berkeley or who might like to turn up, it's mostly the Students for Liberty group there, but also invited many people from engineering and other disciplines, so it should be a mostly student group. Yeah, I think that's what's new, right? Max?
Max Marty, I'm the CEO of Blue Seed. It is a company that is looking to create a visa-free startup technology incubator 12 miles off the coast of the Bay Area. And we are very excited about a lot of cool stuff that we're researching and stuff that we're doing in order to be able to launch this venture in about a year and a half. And yeah, if anybody wants to know more, blueseed.co, and you'll find a lot of stuff about us on the web.
Hi, I'm Colby Davis. I'm a background in economics and finance. I'm a Bay Area libertarian, futurism, entrepreneurialism groupie. First time at one of these meetups. Right.
I am Cyprien Noël. I came to California 1 year ago to start Object Fabric, which is a new way to create applications with technology for developers. And I've been following the Seasteading movement for many years now because I just love the idea.
Well, I'm Mike Parziali, and I'm here to talk about the Elastic Republic today, which is a new framework or a new system for allowing people to organize themselves, self-organize, and agree with one another with a new online system and framework and currency. And I'll tell you more about it in a bit.
You want to take over and film my intro and then put it back?
Okay. And the last is Roman. I am very excited about seasteading potential of the seasteading community and the philosophy itself in rejuvenating our societies in general and becoming a frontier, if you like, for young, innovative, entrepreneurial people to go to and fully unfold their potential. There's amazing, that's what I love about the communities. There's so many different people, so many different backgrounds, yet are interested in going to that frontier and reaching new heights. So I'm very excited. We are doing a few seasteading / libertarian projects on the side. One of which would be Zeden. This is something we're trying to accomplish on land first, and that's to create a live-work community of young entrepreneurs, high-tech professionals, something similar to Rainbow Mansion or Tortuga, but with a lot more expandable or extendable framework, so we can host more people than just what the current space that these other houses occupy. And we were looking at shipping container houses or other kind of modular building, and we'd love to hear your feedback. You can go to Walking Innovators and join. This is one of the projects of Walking Innovators. If you join, we'll send you a link to a knowledge management system where you can participate in that community. And we're looking to have something on the ground by September this year. Thank you. So at this point, we'd like to welcome. Actually, yes. Any more updates? We're right on time now. 7:45. News updates from Seasteading movement. Let's talk. You guys mentioned a little bit about the Seasteading Institute, all the talks. Then Mark, maybe you can talk a little bit about the Seasteading medical tourism for Seasteading. Any updates?
I think I covered that. Maybe the one thing that's missing from the video is a discussion of the conference on June 1st.
Yes.
Yeah.
The conference is on June 1st and 2nd. That's a Friday and Saturday. There's also a meeting the previous night, so May 31st. 31st. The conference is focused on entrepreneurs and investors, engineers, and people who are serious about making Seasteads actually happen. Our previous conferences have been attractive to enthusiasts and students in various ways, and we certainly don't want to turn anyone away. But the focus is different this time. We're anticipating that new businesses will come out of this. Bob Barr will speak. The guy who ran for Libertarian president in 2008, is that right? Yes. And former Republican congressman. We may also get Robert Ballard, who's expressed some interest in speaking, though that's pretty uncertain right now.
Yes.
Robert Ballard is the discoverer of the Titanic and the Bismarck and a bunch of other very famous shipwrecks. Marine archaeologist, I think is what they call him.
Seasteading is also going to be at the 2012 International Students for Liberty Conference in Washington, D.C., February 16th to 17th, and we're particularly excited because Peter Thiel will be delivering a keynote on opening night, so we think that will prime a lot of the students to be particularly interested in efforts like the Seasteading Institute, which don't fall under that category of folk activism, which Patri laid out in an old Cato Unbound forum. Check it out, folk activism, Patri Friedman. It's a whole cool thing there. But yeah, Michael's going to be giving a talk at one of the breakout sessions, and we're going to be trying to recruit students to do volunteer research for us. So if you know students, send them to our website. There's a new section under the community tab for students.
We'll also be at the Build Conference, March 2nd to 4th. That's held on the Queen Mary near Los Angeles. Right?
Long Beach.
Okay.
It's all set. Mark, any medical tours or anybody else? Also, I'd like to hear about Max's, Max and Dario's media appearances for Blue Sea. It's been all over TV. So.
Yeah, we've been on Fox News, we've been on Reason TV, we've been on Stossel, and we've been on a few other outlets scattered around the internet in terms of video, and then of course more print articles and such than one could shake a stick at. And I think it's really exciting, and a lot of people are connecting with us through those channels. Right now our primary focus is on closing the round that Peter Thiel is funding. So he's looking to syndicate, which is bring in other investors into the same round as him. And then once we've closed off that round, we'll do what we need to do to proceed forward and be ready to ask to raise the big bucks in about a year's time.
And one of the key things that you talked about too before the camera was rolling was sort of public perception. I think I saw that you guys had a PR firm that was helping with getting the message out correctly. And if so, that's probably good.
We did speak to a PR firm, and actually they're helpful in sort of how do people understand your message and how you communicate the right message that is what you're trying to convey in the right way. But I think the most important thing that we've done in the PR realm is that we help people to actually understand, here is exactly what we're doing. We're creating a space for entrepreneurs to be able to come and create companies that would otherwise not have existed. And then once they outgrow our facilities, those companies will move on to land into Silicon Valley proper and create jobs, improve the economy right here in Silicon Valley. And that's a message that we are really hoping that everybody can understand in an accurate way.
Let's hear this. Let's hear the talk now. Yeah.
Before
before you shoot there, lads, we just got to run through here, all right?
Pardon me?
Okay. There's only no, we're parked out the back. We got to go to the airport, so before you set off. No problem.
Oh, okay.
What? We're going to be real fast. What's going on? Okay, where you at? Where you go?
I didn't know there was that.
Some stuff we didn't need to do.
Okay, order some fish and chips.
They're out back now. Throwing spears at
We'll cut it out.
I don't want to miss the Do you want to grab it right now?
Okay. Get it through.
Okay, at this point, it's our pleasure to welcome Mike Parziale. He's been the driving force behind Elastic Republic, which is something quite unique. And as far as I understand, this is the first attempt to really structure the framework for running a society, if you will. So we realized that seasteading will require, as Patrick Friedman wrote, competing governments. So Elastic Republic, in a way, is one of the framework that would allow those governments to compete in a very, actually to run those governments and compete in a very fair, transparent, and Web 2.0, Web 3.0 fashion, because basically everything is through the internet. So hopefully we can achieve the premise of what democracy was supposed to bring to us through the Web 2.0 or internet technologies in general. So without further ado, it's my pleasure to welcome Mike Parziale. He'll talk about Elastic Republic. Welcome, Mike. Thank you.
Thank you, Roman. So as Roman said, I'm Mike Parziale, and my background is I have a BS in electrical engineering, and I've worked in business, Fortune 500 company, and as a systems engineer at the time. I spent a lot of time studying for myself just politics, monetary systems, and basically republics, and how all of that works. And so that's why I'm here for you today to tell you what is the Elastic Republic. And basically, it's going to be a framework to run societies or organizations, smaller organizations. Hopefully it can scale up eventually to an entire society. The main idea is to unite independent individuals. And so right now, we have the United States. So instead of the United States, why don't we just get right down to the people, make them independent, and then figure out a way to deal with one another without having to work with precedent, basically. So it's going to be voluntary to join the system. There are going to be no geographical borders. Why limit a government to a geographical border when organizations are worldwide, multinational organizations worldwide. So a key part of the system is going to be fractional votes. I'm going to be coming back to this soon. There are going to be formal contracts between individuals in the system. And the idea is it's elastic, so it's flexible. There are hierarchies, there's priority and ranking for different people that you're working with. And there's going to be transparency. And there'll be a virtual currency, that's actually the fractional votes in the system. So there'll be money trails, if you will, not actual cash money, but we're creating a voting system. And you'll be able to see how people derive their power with these fractional votes. And I'll get into that later. And so there'll be a history built into the system, and so you'll be able to go back and look at a person's profile, look at what projects they've been involved in the past, and you'll be able to basically determine their reputation. What do other people think about them? And their ability to help out on the project, make it a success. So
why do we need the Elastic Republic? I think a lot of us already know about that. We're libertarians and we're here about seasteading. But we have oppressive governments, there's a lack of transparency, the laws have become non-uniform. So we have double standards, the rich and the poor is just one example. There's a lot of slow change, red tape, centralized control, bureaucracies, divisiveness. So one of the main problems with the static republic, and the static republic is what I call the system we have today with democracy or the government with Congress and the president and all of that. One of them is that it's static structure. So for example, there's one president, 100 senators, and 435 representatives, and so you have to elect all of them with majority rule, and then they go off and they join the oligarchy, so a few of them make the laws that are supposed to be governing all of the rest of us. So that right there is a problem because it limits the number of people who can be representatives in the system. It's static temporally, right, which means you have election day, then you have to wait 4 years before you can elect somebody new. You can't kick them out in between the term. And it's collectivized. There are double standards and all the laws now. They don't treat anyone uniformly anymore. They treat different professions, specifically different than other people. So then the lobbying comes into it. So it's just not fair. Then court judgments. There's the arbitrary court cases, lawsuits. So the idea is how do we apply market principles to the republic? So instead of having an election where you vote at the beginning of the term and then have to wait for the whole term, how do we make it so that at any time the person with the most fractional votes has the most political power within the system? I'm going to get into that later. In the Elastic Republic, every member has multiple roles. Everybody is a voter, and everybody will be a representative to some degree. And the question is, how much of a representative are they going to be, and who will they represent? The idea is that in the Elastic Republic, it's going to be online. And so we'll be able to track individual relationships between any two sets of people and any transaction of fractional votes that occurs. So there are two types of representatives. One is a coordinator, so that's like you're electing your politician or your CEO for that matter, since we're not doing geographical borders. You could be like electing your CEO or any project leader if it's a smaller project. And then there are the specialized workers, and the coordinator is a type of specialized worker. He's the special kind, right? He's the leader at the top of the hierarchy. And then the specialized worker is anyone else, any employee who's doing something on the project. So let's see. The idea is that we're going to set up this web app, and there will be profiles for individuals, and there will be profiles for businesses, or projects, or whatever you want to call it, organizations of any type, whether it's political or has more to do with industry. Eventually, I guess it can get into industry and economics. Now, there's going to be contracts. So for any transaction, there'll be a contract. Why did fractional votes exchange hands? And then there'll be relationships established too. So the idea is that, if I hire somebody with a salary, I'm establishing a relationship between them. And that works in our current capitalistic system, and it has to do with real-world things that we're trading and stuff. But the idea is to apply this to a governmental system, so that as you're exchanging fractional votes within the system, you're actually establishing a relationship where every day, you're going to be doing something with that person you've hired. And then the same thing when all the people who, think of a bottom-up hierarchy, which I'll get into later, but all the people can vote for a CEO or a politician or something, right? And so they're actually establishing two types of relationships, one for the bottom-up hierarchy and one for the top-down hierarchy. More on that later. There's going to be public and transparent contracts, so everybody will be able to see them. So that adds the transparency to government that we don't have today. Right now, we don't know what Congress is doing, why they're doing it, and it's not individualized. We don't know how a law that they're creating is affecting any one of us. So the idea is to build that type of stuff into the system. Reputation and credibility, so transaction-based, value-weighted. The idea is that you can build reputation with like a star rating or things like that, that weight it based on the number of fractional votes and who has them at the current point in time. Who has the most fractional votes is who has the most political power in the system. So what is a fractional vote? So what's the genesis of it? The idea is that every person has one vote, right, in a republic. So what we do is we take that vote and we divide it up into 1 million fractional votes of equal weight. In the system, we'd have a term length of 5 years, and we're going to make the elections market-based. And so the reason I call it Elastic Republic is because it's resilient. And that's the idea that everybody starts out independent within the system. And then there's going to be elections where you elect a politician, and it's going to tend back over time to the idea that everybody is independent again. So it's a resilient system, it's elastic, it tends back to independence. The system will allow for innovation, it's scalable, it could be scaled up to the whole world eventually. It's flexible, adaptive, and dynamic. And fractional vote can actually end up being a measure of value so that you can trade more than your labor. So right now the idea is that you're trading labor, but in the future maybe you can trade other things as well if we stop using other types of currency. It's not a store of wealth. In other words, the idea is not to hoard fractional votes at any point in time. The idea is to use them to either maintain your independence or to establish ongoing relationships with people at the current point in time. When I give a fractional vote to any one of you, I'm basically saying I support your 5-year plan because the term in this system is 5 years. And so then you'll be able to hold on to that fractional vote for 5 years. After 5 years, it cycles back and it goes about 1 vote per person again to everybody, so that you can continue to have elections within the system. So relationships and elections, it's all now. There's no hoarding of any type of fractional vote. If you want to hoard and save money, and we end up using this to trade in commodities or property, or any real world things, then the idea would be to trade and buy gold or buy property from other people so that you have a store of wealth and you can use it too. So the idea is that kind of fractional votes is applying market concepts or currency concepts from the monetary type of a system to a republic and the idea of voting. So the idea is not to keep all your fractional votes in your account as a means to buy things in the future. The idea is to establish relationships now with fractional votes. So let me give you this example. This would be the 5-year term in the system, and the orange line here would be the beginning of the term. This would be like election day. So this is when everybody gets their votes. Everyone has 1 vote per person. And then there's a vote flow that occurs. I'll get more into that later, but you elect your representatives, and the representatives are in office for the entire term. They're making the laws, they're doing everything, you have no control, right? Until the end of the term. The end of the term is the red line here. So at the end of the term, what happens? All the fractional votes are taken away from the politician, whoever it is. The votes are taken away from the politician. And they're divided equally back to 1 vote per person again, right? And that's what makes a republic a republic, is the idea that politicians lose all their power at the end of the term. The power goes back out to the people, they're supreme, and then they elect their new representatives. So what we're going to do is we're going to make a vote, we're going to make fractional votes. So in this example, I'm not going to do 1 million fractional votes because we're not going to see them, but here you can see that we're dividing 1 vote into 5 pieces. And then the way the system works is these votes are staggered in time. So you can see that for this fraction of a vote, 1 year into the term, it will expire and go back onto the people again. And then next year later, this next 20% or the next fifth will go out to the people. The next fifth will go out to the people, and the next fifth. So the idea is that then we can divide this into the 1 million votes so that every 157 seconds you'll actually be getting 1 fractional vote, 1 millionth of a vote into your account. And what this allows you to do is it allows everybody to asynchronously, in a market-like fashion, elect their leader. So whoever they think is the leader ought to be, there'll be a trade, a transaction will take place, and then the person with the most fractional votes in their account will be the person who has the ability to make the rule in a meeting. So people will come together in a meeting, and like Congress, the definition of Congress is to have a meeting. So if the person with the most fractional votes has the most say on whatever topic that meeting will be about.
Just a clarifying question. How does you juxtapose that with the idea of a term? I mean, are you elected for 5 years, and if so, what's the significance of the fractional votes change?
Well, so the way it works is you are, as long as you have a fractional vote in your account, and you have more than the next guy, then that means that supposedly you would have more power in that meeting than them. And over time, there's going to be a built-in tax in the system and an appropriations in the system, and that's what happens here at the beginning and end of each term, right? But now we've staggered the term across each fraction of the vote. So we've turned it more into a monetary system at this point. So the result is that fractional voting, does that answer your question?
Yeah.
The fractional voting system allows individuals to remain independent and free to choose what they're going to do with their time. So as long as I have, for example, 1 million fractional votes in my account, then that means that I'm independent. I don't necessarily have to go out and work for anybody else or get a job for the politician who's been elected. And I'll give an example of this in a few minutes. There's a continuous fractional vote provision, and that replaces elections. So that the tax that I mentioned is an inflation-like tax. There are no transactional taxes in the system at all. Right now, we have income taxes and our sales taxes. So anytime a transaction takes place, the government's taking the percentage off the top. Well, this is more like turning the Federal Reserve or the central bank into a republic. Basically, it's an inflation-like tax, and that's how. So it's a fair tax based on the amount of money, or fractional votes, excuse me, that you have in your account. That's taken away from you, and it's explicitly taken away by the tax. And then it's provided 1 vote per person again. So the idea here is that it ends up combining markets and voting power so that we can elect people and remain independent. We have our libertarian ideals built into the system here. So we have a currency, it's points, it's market-like, asynchronous allocations. I already went through that. So, and I also already went over this too, where the flow of fractional votes in the system is power. Okay, so it's not that me having fractional votes in my account gives me power. It's when fractional votes are flowing to me, that's kind of like what the power is. So if you guys are familiar with engineering, you have energy, and it's just sitting there in a battery, then there's no power flowing. But once these electrons start flowing in a circuit, then there's power. And the same thing applies to fractional votes. As soon as they start flowing from person to person, that's giving a person power. So let me see here. So here, at election time, everybody is independent, and there's going to be a flow of votes to choose our representatives. And what that's going to end up establishing is a bottom-up hierarchy, where here's an example of a few people who are voting, and then this is the politician or the CEO or the project leader that they're choosing. So they're flowing fractional votes to Vinny, and that's giving him power and the ability to be more supreme than them, so that they can turn around and get something done in the society. Because that's really the reason you elect people, is to do something for the people. So the people are supreme, and that's really what a republic is. There's general equality among members. The supreme power resides in citizens who are entitled to vote. A republic is not a democracy, and it's not an oligarchy. A democracy is the majority rule, and they force the minority to do what they want to do. An oligarchy is the minority rule, a few people rule, and they force the majority to do what they want to do. And so the idea here is that we have the Republic, and we don't force anybody to do anything. It's really the libertarian ideal, if you will. And so everybody belongs to the same class, if you will, and they can all vote, and they're all representatives in some way or another. So the origin of power is all members of the Republic. I guess what that means is that when you come into the Republic, a new vote is created. So a new 1 million fractional votes is now created in the system. So as the population increases, the total fractional vote supply actually increases proportionally to the number of people. And so there's transparency, contracts, reputation is, so every time there's a transaction or an ongoing flow of fractional votes, there's a contract that's associated with that. And that contract explains why am I giving power to this person? What are they doing for me in exchange? So for an example, for the bottom-up hierarchy, if I'm a person and I really like the idea of seasteading, for example, then I would start a flow or maybe a one-time transaction of fractional votes to the seasteading organization because I like that vision. I think it's a really good vision and I'd like to see it happen. So I actually give it to the CEO. So I know exactly why that person has derived the power that they derived because they came up with this great vision for a seastead. And now that person can now delegate fractional votes back up. So this is a top-down hierarchy now, where he's actually delegating responsibilities to individual people to do certain tasks on the Seastead project, for example, so that things actually get done. And I think I have an example of that here. So we have the bottom-up hierarchy where we actually choose Vinny, say Vinny was the head of the Seastead project. And then Vinny, turned around and actually to the same people hired them back, and now they're doing specific things on the project. So here are these red lines. I'm kind of illustrating the idea that there's votes flowing from person to person. So with the Elastic Republic part of the system, with the bottom-up hierarchy, there's going to be harmony added to the system because people actually choose their leaders, and that's really the whole point. Is that people are independent, and that we choose our leaders, and we have a democracy. And it's actually a republic, but people always say it's democratized. And then there's the top-down system that actually gets things done. We're familiar with that in everyday life. There's corporations and businesses and projects. It's a project leader and the people who are actually doing things in parallel so that it gets done quicker. So this is an example here of, George might have a huge number of fractional votes, whereas Jess has less fractional votes and Justin has even less. But George only allocates this many fractional votes on an ongoing basis to Vinny, whereas Jess allocates this much, which is many more, and Justin only allocates this much. So there's two different things being shown here. This is the balance, the amount, and this is the flow, the ongoing flow, so the power transfer from George to Vinny. And so that's all bottom-up support. So the idea is that this is going to be a web app, and on this web app, this type of stuff will automatically get generated with the hierarchies already. And then Vinny will turn around and he can say, okay, well, I'm going to turn around and I'm going to hire George and keep him on loan to be able to do these things for me. And same with Jess and Justin. And Justin ends up being more valuable to Vinny for whatever reason, so he gets more power allocated to him on a regular basis. It's an ongoing system. So the idea is that there are three types of transactions. One is the one-time transaction, and that's where you're just saying, okay, do this for me one time, or maybe we're going to trade at some type of a real-world thing, and so it's just kind of like the way we use money today. You write your check, it pays in one time. And then there's an idea of a one-way ongoing vote flow allocation, and that's where you're writing a check on a regular basis. But the idea is to start visualizing it as a continuous flow that might be happening every few minutes rather than every month. So because you have an ongoing relationship, so that's like if you're paying your taxes or maybe insurance or something, a regular payment, and they're providing something back for you. then there would be a two-way ongoing vote flow, and that's basically where, back here, basically George and Vinny get into an agreement with one another, and they decide that George is going to choose Vinny from the bottom up because George likes Vinny's vision. Right? So George will elect Vinny as his leader. Then they'll turn around and Vinny will elect George as a leader for the same amount of vote flow, which I'm not showing here, but with the same amount of vote flow. So basically, these fractional votes will be going around in a circle. Right? They started with George, they go to Vinny, they go back to George, the exact same amount. But remember that there's a contract, there are two contracts. One for this relationship, where George is supporting Vinny as a leader of some type, and another for this relationship, where Vinny is making George a delegate of some type of responsibility on the project. So even though these fractional votes, this new currency that's not really money, it's political in nature, is just going around in a circle, it's establishing two contracts, establishing order and organization in the world. And so that's really what the goal of this is to allow people to self-organize themselves. You can create entire bottom-up and top-down hierarchies, and it's all about establishing relationships now, right? And that's why we don't care if the fractional votes are just going in a circle. So here's an example. Remember up here we have the 5-year term, and we've divided it into 5 fractional votes for this example. And this fractional vote ends 1 year in, this fractional vote ends 2 years in, 3 years in, 4 years in, and then this first one ends 5 years in. And so here we are at this point in time, and the 5-year term is coming to an end. So these are these 6 people's account balances. This actually represents utopia in the system, if you will, because everybody has 1 million fractional votes, or in this case 5 fractional votes, in their account. So they're all independent, right? And so no one has more supremacy over anyone else at this point in time. And it just so happens that everybody likes it that way, and so there's a 20% tax on everyone's account balance, an inflation-like tax, and then that's taken away, divided equally, so that there's 1 vote per person again, or 1 fractional vote per person for this 5th of the vote, right? And then everybody gets back again. And so then everyone's happy being perfectly independent, and then same thing happens with the next fractional vote, taken away 1 vote per person, everybody gets back again because they're all equal. They're all independent right now because we're in this utopia state of the system. And it remains that way with the next one, and it kind of continues on in that fashion. But then, now notice in the middle of the term and in the middle of the fractional vote, everybody decides, I need to elect somebody because I like this guy, number 2, say this was Vinny. I like his plan. I think it's a really good vision for the next 5 years, and I'm actually going to support it. But I don't want to be involved in the project on an ongoing basis. I'm just going to give my fractional votes to him, and over the next 5 years, let him do his thing so that he can make that project a reality. And the same thing is going to happen for this guy over here, number 5. And so what ends up happening is this guy ends up getting 2 votes of fractional votes in this account. This guy ends up getting 4 votes of fractional votes in this account. So this isn't representing any of the ongoing transactions that I was talking about earlier. The ongoing transactions, could have been happening while everybody was independent. So there could have been order, hierarchy, and organization while everybody was independent. Now they're saying we don't want to establish just that kind of order. We actually want to give somebody more supremacy in the system than somebody else. And so that's what's happened here. And because that's happened, next time the election, this fractional vote comes up, right? It's time to recycle that back to the people because its 5 years are up. So there's a 20% tax on the account balance. So this guy loses 20%, which is 2/5, and this guy loses 20%, which is 4/5. That's an example. That comes back down to the people. Everybody's lifted up. And now they have their independence back, at least partial independence back. these guys still have their supremacy. So at this point, all these people can re-elect these leaders so that they remain supreme, you know, if they want to continue that type of a system, or they can take it back, allocate it to another person, keep it for themselves, whatever they want to do. So if you think about it, it's almost like saying we're going to bypass Congress and their appropriations, and we're going to let people subsidize whatever programs they like, you know, for themselves. So why should I go to the ballot box and vote for somebody and then turn around and have them allocate it to something that I don't even care about, right? This kind of, I mean, it's not the same because we're not talking about money here, we're talking about fractional votes, but it's sort of the same idea. We're taking out the middleman, we're taking out Congress. So then here we're continuing on this sort of example to the term. Oh, that's the end of it. Okay. So that's pretty much the value proposition for the Office of Public. It's going to localize and individualize voting. Rather than having some central authority who's going to be taking care of everything, making laws that control everybody, we bring it back down to the local level. You know, you only vote for people that you know, and then they can go together in meetings and other meetings, and you can start building huge hierarchies if you really wanted to, or we could just organize smaller groups of people. But it is scalable so that you can have more levels in a hierarchy and have entire corporate structures like what runs the world today. I already went over that they're not for storing wealth. All the contracts are mutually agreed upon. And one idea is that you can continuously prioritize this agreement that you have with somebody. So you can have a contract that says, I'm going to be doing X, Y, Z for you. And then something else might come up, and you can change your mind and say, well, I'm going to start allocating a little bit more to this other guy's idea and less to mine. And then you can just adjust that, and now I'd be receiving less vote flow coming to me. It's kind of a more advanced topic. Politicians must deliver what they promise or they will lose their support. And that's basically what I just said, you know. If you're not performing, then people start voting for you in the middle, stop voting for you in the middle of the term, whenever they want, you know, and they start going for whatever they like the best. And that's really applying the market principles to the Republic, because right now we have to wait until the end of the term, and then we only have a choice of a few people. And then, because it's a democracy, majority rules, right? So there's all these problems with the current system. But the idea is that this could all be developed into a web app. Obviously, there's going to be no paper fractional votes that you're going to be exchanging with people. And that's a good thing, because now we know it's all in one database. We know exactly who has the power and who doesn't. You know, because it's in this person's account, or the fractional votes are in this person's account. So instead of having an inflation-like system where new votes are printed and then given out to everybody, we can actually tax directly in an inflation-like manner and explicitly show it to people. So it's not this hidden tax like inflation currently is today. And that's because it will be built into an online system. So that's a really great feature of this. So the idea is that we'd have the profiles for individuals and businesses. There'd be contracts with tracked transactions, and we have fractional votes. It really is the whole key to the whole system. So I have other slides in my back pocket if you guys have any questions.
Questions or some comments. I guess the thing I like the best about this is that it's I want to say bottom up. It's actually more like many to many. It also is subject to market forces, which I really like. But sort of like to ask you to compare and contrast it with anarcho-capitalism, which would be providing some of the same types of services in sort of a purely business type of way. So in other words, instead of voting, you would vote with dollars. And you know, if I want to buy a service, I pay for it.
Right.
If I don't like the service, I get it from someone else.
And that's actually fine for me. I'm a huge supporter of that, as long as we don't have a central bank. Right? Because right now, with the whole central banking system, I mean, you guys know how it works. They print money out of thin air as long as somebody borrows it and pays it back principal plus interest. So that gives them immense control and power over the entire capitalist system.
So this is an alternative sort of value system then?
Yeah, basically it's replacing the central bank and it's making it a republic. And at the same time, it's replacing the idea of the republic that we have today. It's kind of combining the two, the central bank and the republic, into one thing. So it takes the market principles, the best of that world, and it takes the republic principles, the best of that world, and combines it.
If everybody has one vote, that also gets a sort of an expansion of government type of. It gets into some issues with the expansion of government. If each person has one vote, and you are the central bank, as it were. Each person is the central bank.
Yeah,
in a sense.
right. And so then the idea is that there are many members who are equally the owners of the central bank, rather than, I don't even know, I mean, we don't even know, there's probably like 8 families right now, right, who own the central bank, and basically through that own the entire world. We don't know really who owns all the companies and everything.
But what's interesting about that is you wouldn't be able to infinitely expand the size of government. It would have some bounds on how many people you have.
Why is that?
Well, if you had 1 million people with 1 million votes, and everybody gave all the votes to some government project, there would still be an upper bound on how large that government project would be. It would be the number of votes based on the number of people. As opposed to a central bank that could just keep printing money and making it program.
Yeah, and when the central bank prints money, they're still valuing the same real world goods, the same real world labor. And so all they're doing is devaluing their currency.
I was thinking you could set up like a fractional reserve voting bank. I thought that could be a pretty good business to do, and that's where I take deposits of people's votes and I can loan them out to people, with interest and pay interest on the deposits.
I guess you could do that, but eventually there would be a limit to the total number of fractional votes in the system because there's only 1 million fractional votes per person. So eventually you'd be loaning them out, and it would get to the point where there wouldn't be enough fractional votes in the system to repay principal plus interest on your debt. So
it's not inflationary.
Yeah, it's not inflationary. It would reach a limit where you would have to loan out.
What powers does this government have?
This is basically it. The idea is that the people with the most fractional votes at any point in time create the laws and the powers, and it's kind of like the corporation structure. You go to work and you live under that corporation's rules.
But does it have the power to coerce people?
Yeah, I mean, that's the
in other words,
idea.
you sign up for this, and under the system, a majority of votes determine that certain services have to be provided, and those have to be supported through taxation.
Oh, no.
So that's not possible.
No, yeah, it's not possible. Basically, the only thing that you're agreeing to voluntarily when you join the Elastic Republic is the idea that there are these fractional votes, that they're staggered over the term's 5 years, there are 1 million of them, and that basically that means that there's going to be this tax and this cycling back that keeps people independent. It's resilient, making people become independent again, so that they can re-elect their current leaders or maintain their independence or new leaders. So the idea is that eventually you can change the power, who has it. And it's not constantly the same.
I'm on a different plane here. What services is this going to provide, and how are those services going to be financed? I understand that you sort of marketize the voting process, but I don't see how the service provision is funded.
Well, there isn't any.
Then why bother joining a republic that doesn't provide any services?
Well, because basically what this allows you to do, one of the ideas with Seastead is that there'll be competing governments. And so, a government's going to have certain rules, it's going to provide certain services, whatever you want to do, right? The idea is that this is the framework for choosing the government that you want. So you have a group of 1,000 people on a Seastead. I don't know how many people are going to be on a Seastead. But now some of them can go and they can bottom-up elect this government, some of them another government, some of them another government. And then they do their thing. They're all united on this Seastead through the system. So actually this leader could hire other people who supported other guys, or he could just hire people under him. But overall, these could start, these different governmental systems could start, this could be one industry, this could be another industry, food production, waste, recycling. And then you have a whole system now where the CEO who's responsible for that, and the CEO is responsible for that. They're all going to provide different services. So this all starts happening within this framework.
But that also raises another question of what services do you expect a government to provide? I don't see any reason why a private company can't provide sewer services, water services, school services.
Yeah, so the government is just the Elastic Republic. It is just this fractional voting system. So it's not providing anything. It's one of these other organizations that's starting up within this structure that's providing.
So how does this system deal with contract enforcement and dispute resolution?
So basically there's a history that's constantly being maintained. So if this person said he was going to do X, Y, Z, and it's been like forever, and then all of a sudden people stopped supporting him, that'll be recorded. And that'll be in a history. So next time somebody wants to do business with this person,
Suppose somebody decides to erase this.
yeah, there's a problem. But basically the idea is instead of any arbitration, instead of any court, some third-party person who comes in and says, I know what's right in your case, your lawsuit or whatever, it's just the market makes decisions for itself. So the idea is that if there is a reputation history built in there, and somebody's not living up to their word on a regular basis, then people are just going to stop doing business.
And that's an interesting alternative to the contract enforcement in general. It's sort of like, the thing that eBay really brought to the world is that reputation.
Exactly.
So I don't understand where, so if, someone activates a lot of votes, I don't understand how that gives them any authority to, my plan is I want to make some new zoning ordinance in this area. How do I got some people to support me and gave me a lot of votes? How do I take those votes and make the zoning ordinance? I don't just show up and go, I have votes, we follow this plan now. I mean, how does that translate?
So basically, for the Elastic Republic, the idea is that you have to kind of divide the world into two pieces. One is the people side, where there's labor, and it's just people trying to decide how they're going to organize themselves. Then there's the real world, property, right, zoning. And that's obviously going to have to be majority rule eventually. So the way I envision that working is that if you do start trading property and commodities with fractional votes instead of central bank money, then the person with that huge store of fractional votes in their account now has the ability to go and buy from the current owner of it that property. They can zone it however they want. Right, and then build on and develop it and use it.
So you're suggesting this as a total replacement of the current monetary system?
I think it could be on a seastead, and eventually, if it ever did scale up and people understood it and worked, then I could see it replacing the central banking system and any other republicans. But I mean, that would take a lot of people understanding and a lot of public support.
So
definitely not suggesting that overnight.
What I got kind of hung up on the first part was you're suggesting sort of geographic diversity, but the definition of the government is a geographical monopoly. So I mean, I understand the idea that if you just sort of went and bought a bunch of land, you could kind of do whatever you want with it.
Right.
But that sort of makes the whole fractional voting redundant. So I don't see what it adds to it than just saying I own this land. I'm going to kind of do whatever I want.
Well, I mean, if you do start trading property with fractional votes as the measure of value, right? Then I'm not quite sure I understand your question. But
if I may interject, maybe I think what you mean is that if somebody buys the land, then they can do whatever they want. But if you think about where they got the money, or fractional votes to buy the land, it's probably those votes come from thousands of other people that gave you their votes so that you could buy the land. So you have the responsibility to them. Otherwise, they're going to withdraw the vote flow. So you're going to have less. How's that work? You're going to have less vote flow, right? So your power will not remain the same.
right, yeah. So if people stop giving you fractional votes on a regular basis, then you're not going to have as much power anymore. And they might be all of a sudden crowdsourced supporting somebody else. And that somebody else's vision might be that we're going to use this same land that this guy owns right now, but we're going to use it for different purposes. And so all of a sudden people start supporting this other person. He now has a huge store of fractional votes, buys the land from the person who currently has it, and now it belongs to him, and he can start enacting that vision on that land. So rezoning, redevelopment.
When you say buys, you mean using fractional votes?
Using fractional votes in a one-time transaction. Yes.
And the original owner sets the price?
Yeah, it would have to be mutually agreed upon and altered.
It would be like the system is depending on everybody subscribing to certain principles and being honorable and dealing with it. It has no prohibition for dealing with coercion, influence, intimidation, and all the kinds of issues that you get in the real situation.
I think Mike already addressed that, because if you're not a good customer, a good contractee, or contractor, then you don't get business.
Public relations firms, you can make people believe all kinds of things.
Well, so I don't know what you can do about that. But one option is that if you do want to sue somebody, or say they did something that was really bad to you, and you have to make that known to everybody, then the idea that I have is that if you ever have to make an accusation of somebody, it's going to cost you fractional votes. You can set how much fractional votes you want to spend on accusing somebody else, but it's going to cost them the same amount. So in other words, if you accuse someone, it's going to cost you, but it's going to cost them too the same amount. And then that's going to be permanently stored in the history. And so that takes away their power as well as your power. And I think that's a good way of doing it, because sometimes you just really want vengeance, and the only thing to do as a human being, is to go hurt them. And so it's going to cost you to hurt them. So it's kind of the same idea where you're spending your money.
If you're very consistent, but you're not necessarily. I'm the head of the mob or whatever. I have ways of applying pressure that don't have to do with fractional votes.
Yeah, there's nothing you can do about kind of human condition. I don't know.
You're worried about public relations, but the other person can also hire somebody to public relations campaign against you. So
if they're big enough and have enough supporters.
Yeah, their friends against their friends, I suppose.
So your PR firms become the lawyers.
Which they kind of already are in the real world, and I don't know how to get around it. Really.
I kind of thought with the tax thing, wouldn't it be easier just to have the fractional votes revert automatically back to the original owner during the 5-year period? So instead of taxing and redistributing, you just have that vote that fraction would expire and just be removed from the holder's account and revert back to
that's
the
what
original
the system
voters.
does. Or another way to do it, which is rate based, we have to keep feeding it the heads and have them keep pumping up.
Yeah, it's a was it Magna Carta? Is that the idea is bring the king down and let the people elect the king? That's basically what the system builds in. Go ahead.
I want to just briefly motivate and ask you for your reaction to an alternative construct to this.
Okay.
So my thinking is that most people are not really interested in participating in democracy. And that's true both in the state as well as in corporations. Like, for example, I'm often sent proxy envelopes to send in, and I don't bother filling them out. So I think a lot of people aren't interested in participating. So the way I look at it, and the way I think seasteading adds a lot of value is, different people can set up different institutional structures, and then you just join the one that you want. And so if you don't like how a particular seastead is operating, you move to another one.
Right.
So to me, it's almost like a benevolent dictatorship. I'd rather have someone just take care of all the institutional framework for me, not bother with voting or exchanging my votes with anyone else, and just go about living my life. No, what I call it is the subscription model. So basically, if you like something, you adhere to it. If you don't like it, you unadhere to it. So as long as you're freedom of movement, you can do whatever you want. I just think voting and all this democracy stuff creates a lot of overhead that makes society less efficient.
Well, and so, but I mean, what this is doing is it's applying the market principles to the republic. And so, by recycling the votes back around and letting people choose their leader, that's what's happening here. Right? You have the bottom-up hierarchies, that's the top one, and they're choosing this leader, right? And so that's the subscription model. So they could just set that up. Their allocations are automatic. And maybe if they get any new fractional votes in their account on a regular basis, because they do over the 5-year term, right? They're automatically given back to the same leaders who they've already elected before. So they don't have to do anything on a regular basis. They don't have to get involved. They just pick their leader, sit back, and they let their leader hire people and work the whole way the world works today. That's this whole top-down part of the system. So it is a subscription model. You're constantly subscribing to the person you want, and then they're taking care of business.
That's right. Yeah, you see where you could do well operating a bank. Because say an important issue comes up, someone needs a lot of votes. You know, you would loan them out a bunch of votes at a really high interest. And they pay back the votes back to you after they've done the vote, or pass the bill or whatever, and then they pay depositors a lower rate of interest.
You're saying it could work.
Yeah, I can see how, yeah, you could actually have a bank fractional reserve.
There's no reason that you couldn't do that, but you're going to reach a point where if you have 50% of the people trying to loan money out to the other 50% of the people, you can't have more than that, right? Because now all of a sudden, if 60% of the people are trying to give loans to 40% of the people, they'll never do it.
Yeah, that's kind of how fractional reserve works too, is you might have 100 grams of gold and you loan out 1,000 grams, figuring that only 10% of the people are going to be requesting their deposits at any time.
Yeah, I mean, if you're expecting everyone to default on their loans, then
yeah,
make as many loans as you want.
cascade pretty quickly.
So yeah, do you have a question?
Yeah, please correct me if I'm off base here, but it seems like with something like a Seastead that there's going to be a massive investment to build the structure initially, and so there's a connection to the real world of money because somebody needs to have the money to build the structure, and so whoever builds it seems like they're going to have precedence over how that land, that finite space is going to be utilized, and so this kind of presupposes that you're just landing on this blank canvas. But in reality, it seems like we're going to be tied to the real world with money. Whoever financially backed the project to begin with is going to have sway over the way that land is utilized.
Yeah, I think it doesn't matter where you go. It doesn't matter if you're on the sea or you're on land anywhere. The current central banking system structure, whoever pays for it's going to have dominion over it. And I think that's just kind of the way it goes. So, I mean, the way it would work is that no matter if you're on sea or on land, the person who owns it, paid for it, is going to have to agree to a framework like this, and then use that to build up institutions and stuff.
So you could see this happening where it's like a publicly funded, or maybe crowd funded, or maybe just a wealthy benefactor.
The wealthy benefactor, as long as whoever is making that decision goes with a system like this, then this system could function, right? So it doesn't matter if it was crowdsourced or if it was just one person.
It seems like the basic idea behind the system is that you have space that could be utilized, you have property, and then people need to come to a consensus about how to use that property and what kind of activities you want to engage in with that space.
Exactly.
And so seems like a means of generating consensus in a group.
Yeah, the whole idea is to unite people, to build up trust, to build a consensus, and basically you're constantly agreeing to disagree, right? So, I mean, Justin might have an idea, Jess might have an idea, George and Vinny, they all could have an idea of the best way to run a society. But you can see in this case, these three have given up their power to Vinny and said, I'm going to agree to disagree, and I'm going to go with Vinny's way to run a society for now. But I'm going to reserve that right, to change my allocation to somebody else at a later point in time whenever I want to. And maybe I'll go and I'll choose Justin's. Right? Everyone will switch over and choose Justin's plan, or whoever, And so it's a constantly adaptable, flexible system.
Yeah, I imagine anybody that gets involved with a system like this is going to have an idea of what they want to accomplish and their own individual motives. And so I can see how you're going to have to secede to somebody else's opinion at some time because everybody can't do.
Exactly,
all
you
the
can't
time.
have, everyone can't be king, right,
Yeah.
at one time, but there's no reason that you can't have different people with their different project ideas up at all times, like on a Kickstarter website or something like that, and then have people say, let's focus on this one, maybe finish that, and next month we'll focus on this one, and next month we'll focus on that one. So you could, do everybody's project in that type of fashion too, but you have it set up so now everyone's focusing on one project at a time.
Yeah.
So everything's getting done.
Well, it seems parallel almost to, I play in a band and there's 6 guys in the band, and it seems like a parallel sort of idea because nobody is the CEO of the band, nobody, all the money's going back into the band, but at the same time everybody has an idea of the way that they want to guide the project and what they want to see happen next and where they think that the current state of affairs is, and there's all these kind of power plays happening all the time and kind of not very well articulated structure.
Right, and this is what this does. It kind of adds the formality to the structure of how a small group of humans would typically try to react, where generally they're equal, but they're going to take turns being the leader, and it's going to go from this guy's idea to that guy's idea. But what this does is adds the structure so that it can scale up to more than 100 people. Because right now most people, they only know about 100 people, and above and beyond that, you don't know the people driving next to the freeway, the people on the other side of the road. This could scale up to the whole world and still have the same, hunter-gatherer type of society.
Well, one thing I wonder is if you could remove the individual from the equation and instead of voting on individuals, you vote on specific ideas and game plans. That might be an effective strategy.
Yeah, I've thought about that, but I think that the idea always originates with a person, and power always resides in a person, not an idea necessarily.
You can't really make a contract with an idea.
Yeah, you can't really make a contract with an idea. You can make a contract with a person for an idea. And I think that's what this is.
Well, I guess I'm a little confused about the contracting and the idea of allocating votes. For example, if somebody has control over a piece of property at a given moment, and then people predominantly say that they want to do something different with it, and they put votes in this guy who has an idea for what he wants to do, then the guy has this backlog of votes, and then he trades it to the other guy, so the other guy now has a bunch of votes.
Yeah, it would be like a proper, when you go and you buy some real estate, the highest bidder wins, right?
So then the guy who has all the money can then use those votes to do
whatever he wants.
And he has the most votes.
Yeah, because he owned this huge piece of property, right? And now other people had to buy it from him. So now he can turn around and buy other property, buy gold, cars, whatever commodities he wants to buy. And so he's reimbursed for giving up control.
So he just translates that backlog of potential power.
He goes and buys other stuff or hires people.
And he agreed consensually to the transaction, so he's not going to go back and hoard his own property. Okay, that makes sense.
I think I'm still not quite too clear on the coercion versus voluntary aspect of it, because, like you were just saying, if somebody has a whole bunch of votes and wants to buy somebody else's car, then they go and say, hey, I'm going to give you this many votes in exchange for your car, and the person can accept or reject the deal, and so on. So where does coercion come into it? I mean, can the person say, well, I have enough votes that everybody else is agreeing with me, and they've given me the power and said that I'm fully in my right to just take the car. I'm going to take the car. I mean, so you're saying that can't happen.
Well, I suppose it could, but the idea is that he has all these votes stored up to buy this car, and so the owner of the car hopefully is convinced, coerced, if you will, in a good way, in order to give up the car because he's going to get all his power. Maybe he'll be able to go turn around and buy a couple houses for what people are giving him for the car. You never know.
What if he just says, I value this car for sentimental reasons at 10 times the number of votes?
And I guess you're not going to be able to get it from him without forcing him to do it.
Or the other case is, your car is worth just one vote. Here's one vote. Sell me your car. If you don't, bad things will happen to you.
Right.
Well,
But I mean,
the coercion, I think, is not in the system at all, is the way I understand it. Because if you want to buy the car, if this guy is not selling, you cannot do anything. So if you're talking about the executive branch that's going, or some like police that's going to control. So the only system we have right now of controlling people through this web-based is through the credibility and reputation. So if somebody, so you can sort of bring people to behave in a human way by not dealing with them. So let's say if the number of people left bad reputation, bad reviews for your profile, then they're going to be less. Other people will be less likely to deal with you, so they're going to be effectively shut out from the social interaction. And you know, if you guys are sellers on eBay, you realize how important it is to have a good reputation on eBay. Otherwise, nobody's going to buy anything from you. So I think it's this economic and even social effect is a lot more powerful than putting somebody in the jail. I think at least in our thinking.
Yeah, I guess another way to put that is that adding transparency to the system is really, and allowing people to go through and click and see, okay, this is why this CEO has power, and this is why these specialized workers have their power. They start building up a reputation, you know. And if someone is constantly like trying to be a CEO and people are giving money to him and he's not achieving anything, or if someone's constantly being hired to be a programmer or do other specialized work, and they're not performing or dealing well with the people, that's going to be recorded in the reputation, in the history. There's going to be this reputation, searchable on this online social networking system, where you look at a person and then you look at their history of transactions, you know, and so people have to start watching themselves, you know, when they're doing transactions, because any time you do a transaction, ongoing or one time, there's a contract, people type up, you know, and they mutually agree on why fractional votes are going from one person to another person. And then everybody can search that from now until the end of time. So, okay, so if you're not doing something right, you're going to be ostracized, right? Just, you know, people aren't going to do business with you. And so that kind of helps prevent the coercion, because if somebody's doing something bad, right, then they're ostracized.
Well, it's not always that black and white, though. I'm all in favor of the idea of using the technology we have and reputation and so on, formalized systems kind of like that. But there has to be some provision for fact-finding, for determining the truth. People lie. People see the same thing and see very different things, and they may be completely sincere about it. Just, you know, he said, she said, whatnot. You can get huge differences in interpretation of what happened, who did what, and if there's no provision for arbitrating or fact discovering the truth. I mean, basically, the jury system started out that way, is a formalized system for finding out what actually happened.
So are you suggesting that everybody in the system should rate a certain
ratings
suit?
have to be a big part of it.
Because there could be people in the system who, I mean, you're talking about building a jury, right? Or no?
Would it be like a wiki structure where consensus is what the history shows, and then if somebody has an issue with it, then they'll edit it?
All I'm really saying is that there's going to have to be a lot to it, and you're going to have to think about it a lot. It's going to have to cover a lot of territory. You're going to have to work within the limits of the way people work, and people work basically on the basis of we're tribal. We obey leaders who have dominance and characteristics, and there's a lot of stuff that goes on.
Well, maybe especially is that the coercion aspect is actually much more complicated than the trivial instance we talk about stealing a car or suing somebody or sort of person-to-person conflicts. But I think the core governance is dealing with much bigger aspects, like you might want to put a tax on pollution, which necessarily involves coercion on a massive scale. So how do you go about doing that? Or are you just saying that's not possible?
Well, I'm saying that if you really wanted to stop pollution or change the way energy was produced in the world, then you would create that vision and people would support that. And then you would create a vision that hopefully can be implemented, so that now people are subsidizing, if you will, this new vision. They're going out and building new infrastructure to make it a reality.
But so if I make a mill that is putting out smog in the air, what's to stop me?
I guess nothing, because the idea is private property, right?
So, and independence. So the idea is that there are individuals, they own their own property, and they have the rights to it. I think that's kind of.
So I don't see the difference between this and plutocracy, which I'm fine with. But I don't see the difference. Why don't we just say it's money?
One thing that was done to you is, you said you got neighbors downstream or downwind of your mill. If it's putting out massive pollution, the neighbors might be unhappy about it.
Well, a very simple way to do that is to say there's somebody like Mike saying, look, or some environmental group that say, look guys, this mill, they're doing so much damage to the environment. You know what, let's not buy their products for the next 2 weeks. And if they don't comply with that,
How well does that work in the world as it is right now?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you buy stuff from China.
Yeah, but you see the huge difference
buy
to this
Apple
system,
products.
and that may well be the answer to the previous question also, how you enforce, is that everything is transparent. So how do you fact find, right? What's the way? Maybe you don't need a jury because every single contract, every transaction is recorded in the system, and it's publicly
As a consumer,
available.
it's my incentive to free ride and just buy the cheaper guy's stuff who's free riding on the pollution problem. And there's a huge public problem.
Well, it depends on people's values too, right? Because in this system, you're constantly getting your fractional votes. You don't have to worry about that as much. So people aren't as scared about fractional votes as they are about money in the central banking system. So we're not talking about a central banking system in which basically central bankers own all the major corporations. They make the decisions around the world on how to do it. We're talking about a system where people are generally equal, and if you don't like the way someone's doing something, you compete. So you go and you say, okay, I'm not going to support that. I'm going to spend time, I'm going to build my own mill that does it a better way. Now you guys can come buy from me.
Let me make a very clear example that might, at least for me, help illuminate. You talked about using this on a seastead, for example.
Okay.
So what if you're on a seastead that's a ship and it's able to move around and go places? And everybody on that side of the room says, next month we want to go to coastal Hong Kong. And the three of us say, well, we don't want to go to Hong Kong, we want to go to Miami next month. And where you guys say, well, look, hey, we have the votes. This thing's going to go to Hong Kong. And we say, well, I mean, none of us voted for it. But we're on the same ship, but like it's our property too. We own cabins 1, 3, and 7. And why we don't want to go to Hong Kong? Like, what's the deal? So this is what I mean by the coercive aspect. Like, there's some points at which it seems like, yes, the majority in this case is going to be overruling the minority, even if we don't at all support your idea or your system, and we're just on there because, well, that's where our dog lives in the 3rd floor. Like I can't leave or whatever the case.
And if the whole group on the ship wanted to agree to something else, there's no reason that Vinny couldn't come up with the idea that we're going to be an oligarchy on the ship, and this small group of people is going to decide where the ship goes, and we're not even going to listen to the authority. So you can come up with new structures within the framework that are new rules, and maybe everybody on the ship agrees with that new structure, and so that's how the ship is, they decide on where the ship's going to go. But I mean, yeah, when it comes to real world things, and not just how do you organize people and labor, right? There's going to be
How to manage your resources, right? I think the majority rule or majority vote flow, who has the most votes that he or she got from other people, will probably be able to convince others. Maybe you don't want to go to Hong Kong. Let me give you 1,000 votes so you can go out and stay here. Maybe rent another ship for the time being or something. So there's going to be so again the way I think this framework is supposed to run is to allow people to cooperate on a mutual, transparent basis.
So go buy another ship. One ship sails one way, one ship sails another way. Coordinate people on the way that there's enough resources, enough yachts and ships and seasteads and homes and cars so that people can share them when they need to. Come up with different structures if you want to. Sharing them.
You lost me when you said majority rules.
Well, I appreciate everybody's interest. We have hit the 9 o'clock mark. If you like, we can continue. I think the topic is very interesting. So let's do the voting. Allocation.
Majority rule? Or?
Let's see. We haven't implemented the web app yet, so I'm sorry. It has to be a majority. However, we would encourage everybody to go to Elastic. Is it applicable?
Actually, let me raise a meta issue here. That is, if under anarcho-capitalism, the only thing that you actually need a government to do is to enforce contracts. If you don't have contract enforcement, which is have reputation, then that sort of nullifies the need for government. So I would argue that reputation means that you actually don't need a government.
Thoroughly necessary.
Well, the
You
government
just need somebody to enforce honesty or reputation.
There's no enforcement. There's just reputation.
Well, then
That's
the
basically what
most
this
powerful
is.
person has the best reputation.
Or
By definition.
they have
Technically
a good reputation because they did what they said they were going to do, which is a good
Or
thing.
because they manipulated the system.
Here, I mean, I've thought about this a lot. Here's essentially, I think the way we have to respond to what you're saying, which is you have to have a certain level.
I'm not in favor of having a government.
Well, no, because this is a very important, frankly, very important point, which is, you know, we were, say, 400 or 500 years ago in the Middle Ages, where 700 years ago, where there was no concept of individual rights or anything like that, right? It was just basically a totally violent society, and whoever had the biggest ability to use force dominated. And that's so true of Iraq. That was one reason why the Iraq War was so stupid, was they had no concept of individual rights or democracy or anything like that. We tried to impose it on them, and it just went back to basically a force-based society. So if you have a society where something less than the vast majority of people don't believe in voluntary contract, being honest, cooperating without fraud or force, anything like this is going to break down. So I like to call it, because Marx talked about, socialist man. I believe in libertarian man. I believe these things will not work unless the vast majority of people in the society have these kinds of views. Then whether it's contract or or an eBay style shunning kind of thing, it'll work because that's the social framework that you're operating.
I'm not sure if I entirely agree with that, because eBay sort of arose spontaneously. Reputations that are on eBay arose spontaneously. It just sort of happened.
But eBay is not a really good analogy in this particular case, because
there.
there's no basic organization of security. I mean, it's not like somebody on eBay is going to come and hit you over the head the next day because they don't even know where you
Also,
are.
eBay has a powerful entity whose interest centers on maintaining the system, mainly its owners.
eBay's security mechanism is if you're a scumbag and you don't deliver what you say you're going to do, then your reputation goes down. That's a security mechanism.
Although there is ways people game around it.
Sure.
Is you buy 100 or 200 $1 ebooks and get this apparently huge reputation that was very cheap.
But eBay is self-selecting. If you try to impose this in a particular geographic area where a large number of people believe in a force-based or fraud-based approach towards life, it's going to break down.
And that's why I think it would be good to start small, on something like a Seastead where people could actually agree on it, and then it doesn't have to be, the whole world's going to be taken over tomorrow and everyone agrees on this thing. It's something that can start, it could be run in a corporation, and the corporation will have, institutions inside of it, that are underneath this framework.
So it's embedded inside of a larger system that already works, and it becomes a tool that maybe grows.
Yeah, there's no reason you couldn't make an Elastic Republic inside of a corporation and have that corporation grow until it's big enough to take over the world or something.
So one note maybe, which you Mike mentioned, ways to gain the eBay reputation system. So if you remember the slides, we specifically said that the reputation or feedback is value weighted. So if you buy something for $1,000 and you have good feedback, but it's just one reputation. It's gonna bring a lot more value than if you have to buy 100 transactions 10 cents each.
Yes, the problem with the eBay system is every reputation vote is equal
Yeah.
instead of being based on the value of the transaction.
Right. So we actually weigh that like the value transaction, and then everything is.
Well, eBay was also sort of meant to sell like knickknacks and small things and things like that. So there's certain kind of a reason for that. It wasn't necessarily to sell houses or something like that.
Wow, it's kind of like Kickstarter's gone from 10,000 to now hundreds of thousands.
I think there's a reason why it probably wasn't valued.
Good.
So we've set up a web page, and you guys can come on here and read more about it. We just launched this last night. So there's not that much on here yet, but you can actually come up here in the corner and log on and sign up, and
So actually, sign up will be ready tomorrow, hopefully. So all of you guys will send you and the YouTube friends. Please come back. That's going to be January 27th. Go back to elasticrepublic.com and you can become a citizen for free. So the idea, we just launched it, it's kind of looking for fun at the moment to build the web app, but at this point you can join this completely transparent framework. It's going to be, if you join, you're going to be put on the mailing list, and then it will be a place for everybody to see your profiles, who you are, and hopefully they can do business with you. And then as we develop this web app, we will be able to also create companies or businesses or projects around your profile and say, this is what I'm proposing. Please give me like a Kickstarter. Please fund this with fractional votes, right? And then we can get some stuff done. So hopefully this will take off. And thank you very much for your feedback in the future also. So we would love to see your membership or you becoming members there. It's all free. It's all elastic. So please come over and thank you again. And Mike, it's been So at this point, I think the official part of the January Seasteading meetup is over. Unless somebody would like to say something in the end, I don't know.
I have an organizational question. So is the intention to do this this day each month?
This day?
Yeah, in other words, was it the fourth Thursday or whatever?
Really the fourth Tuesday, but this month this room was taken on Tuesday. But really Tuesday usually is a better day than Thursdays or Wednesdays.
Let me just make one point about eBay also. eBay did spontaneously. eBay. I worked at an internet provider, not called Best Internet. eBay started as basically one guy here, only Jar, who wanted to sell, Pez things on his on an auction site. He set up eBay originally on one of our shared web hosting accounts, and it quickly exploded. It took off. It exploded, and we forced him to get a co-located server to host it on. And so I helped them set up their first 2 servers on the internet, which were a couple boxes in our co-location facility. And but it definitely arose spontaneously. And I also think that people that would go into a system like this, Mark is worried about a need for self-selection. I think people that would work in an anarcho-capitalist society would be like people that are good sellers anyway, which is come and do their thing in the world.
Can I ask a clarifying question here? So I came a little late. You're talking about transactions and fractional votes. I can see the role for votes in reaching consensus and action, but you also mentioned it as a replacement for the monetary system completely. So in day-to-day, we have we're consumers, we consume all these things, we consume iced tea, it looks like. So would you use votes to buy an iced tea from someone providing iced tea?
Yeah, so for example, I didn't only buy the commodity of the iced tea itself, I rented the use of the glass, the use of this place, and I paid the labor for the people who work here all at the same time. So, you really can't separate in the real world out the real world stuff and human labor, right? And so it ends up combining eventually. And the problem is that, the capitalism is supposed to be real world stuff only. The economy is supposed to be only material things,
And then the Republic is supposed to handle labor, and you're supposed to be free to choose to do what you want to do with your time and all this stuff. That's what the Republic is supposed to be all about. But what ended up happening is everybody works for money now, and that's all controlled by a central bank, which isn't a republic. So, yeah, eventually what it does is it makes the central bank a republic and gets rid of the current political system.
Were you saying each person would get, what was it, 1 million fractional votes or something?
Yeah, the idea is that there's 1 million fractional votes in one vote. So every person gets a vote. So, yeah.
Procedural question. We have checks today, right?
Usually just go head up to the bar and they make a check for you.
Okay. So anyway, once again, the official part is over. Thank you very much, everybody. But please feel free to stick around. We can, those who have time, I think there's a lot of things to discuss. Ephemeral, any takers, any goers. You know, the actual Seasteading conference, any logistics for that. Let's see what other points we have. Yeah, any updates from the Blue Sea, perhaps. Yeah, we'd love to know a little bit more about our new folks that just joined us. I think we have 3 people that I've never met in this context. So we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.